This is the Dane Moore NBA podcast coming at you Wednesday evening. It's July 31st. We're recording this right after Team USA's second game in the Olympics. They beat South Sudan today, 103-86. So we thought we'd sneak in one more July pod here before we start kind of taking a good chunk of the month of August off. We'll talk a little bit about Team USA Ant. And then we have some more of those listener mailbag questions that we've been getting to in the last couple episodes that we'll keep moving our way through. I got Kyle Theige here with me. Kyle, we haven't done a pod together in a couple weeks. You're recording from your new house. Look at those white walls. What's up, man?
I was joking with you before. If you're watching us on YouTube, if you're not, please subscribe because we're going to blow this YouTube channel out this next year. But I wanted to get a Nas Reed fat head and just put it on the wall behind me. I'll probably decorate it a little better than that. But
have I showed you these?
Uh-oh.
I don't know if I showed you when they were there. This is this dude, Andrew Johnson. He gave me a bunch of these. Did I show you those when you were here?
No, I need one. Send me one.
Yeah, we got I got like 6 of them.
It was
you do not put those in the background.
For those listening on Spotify or Apple or whatever you listen to, Dane just showed a cool mural of Nas Reed. And again, just get this off the top. The reason this podcast is so good, there are many reasons, but one of them is because Dane really focuses on the quality of the podcast. So my apologies on my end. There is a little bit of an echo. All I have in here is 2 Home Depot boxes and a pack of Pop-Tarts. We'll get a rug. We'll get furniture. We'll get a TV. This is I was telling you before, I've been covering the team now almost 8 years. You and I kind of came into the game at the same time. Every piece of content I've ever done was at my last apartment. So it's a new era for me. It's a new season coming up for the Timberwolves, but I think there's enough to talk about today. I know we have some mailbag questions, and then also the Olympics, man. So much fun, just on all day long. I go from Team USA basketball to equestrian to gymnastics. It's great for when you're moving to have the Olympics just kind of on in the background.
Yeah. Speaking of, this episode is brought to you guys by Falling Knife Brewing Company. They are doing viewing parties for Team USA today. They did one in the tap room for the game against South Sudan. Here, I'll pull this up here. Kind of their schedule for the week. They will again be opening early on Saturday morning for the Team USA game at 10 a.m. against Puerto Rico. So Saturday morning, I'm gonna head over to the brewery, watch Team USA with some other hoops fans. Get over there, do that. I think it's always jealous of how the World Cup for soccer, the people would always really go out and be walking to go get coffee in the morning. I go by Brit's Pub and it would just be packed at 8 in the morning. I think that's kind of the vibe they're going for over there at Falling Knife. Also, they're doing the Initials game, which I think local people who listen to K-Fan here know what that is. That's going to be every Thursday in August. So if you're listening to this on Thursday morning, you can go over to Falling Knife on Thursday as well to play the Initials game. That's going to be their first time doing that. Falling Knife Brewing Company in Northeast Minneapolis. Kyle, we were texting a little bit about this. Just wanted to talk about Team USA Ant. We've now seen 2 games of him. Team USA is about what you're doing on the floor. It's about the stage. So it's about what you're doing off the floor kind of as well. Just really, in many ways, for Ant, this is putting him not just on the national stage, but the international stage as a face of the game. He's coming off the bench for Team USA, but in a big role. It's kind of like him and KD are the first guys off the bench on this team. I think he played 19 minutes in the first game. Remember, 19 of 40, and then he played 17 today. What have you enjoyed most about the Team USA Ant experience?
I think if you want to talk about Ant and his actual play, specific, specific plays or how he's finding the roller or anything like that, real basketball stuff, I don't really care. And I don't know, maybe you want to talk about that. To me, it's more about you said something really interesting to Britt the other day about how Ant really just hasn't had a day off. And it made me think of this whole move, how sometimes when you have your work week, you're a teacher, you listen to this, you have kids, you're just I just want to get to Saturday. Let me just get to Saturday and have no responsibilities. And then you get there and you're you have coffee. What the fuck am I supposed to do today? With Ant, I think back to when they make the Rudy Gobert trade. I think that was the year that he does the movie. Then he just goes right into basketball. Then he goes in the Nuggets playoff series, they lose. Then he goes right into the Team USA last year for the World Cup. Then he goes right back into Timberwolves basketball. He goes all the way to the end of May Western Conference Finals, and now he's playing basketball again. And it made me think when we saw him in Vegas a couple of years ago, Wolves Lakers preseason game. Everyone's like, he's gotten so much bigger, but he was fat. Like he had gotten bigger, but he was not defined.
Thicker, yeah.
And now you look at yesterday, the GQ photos that the team tweeted out, where he has more abs than like Lifetime Fitness. And to me, it's just all about maybe the best thing that's ever happened to him is that he just doesn't get a day off. I mean, he clearly loves basketball more than ever. And yes, he's not starting on this Team USA team because there are still living legends. But, I mean, he's the youngest guy on the team, and he's going to be the face of that thing 4 years from now. It'll be him. And just to think about how far this kid who is now a young man with a family and All-NBA and, I mean, just think of how far he's come. And it just makes me think as we watch a Jokic or we watch a Giannis for their team, Ant's going to be that dude for Team USA 4 years from now. And Dane, what if one day we really can just say, holy shit, Anthony Edwards is the best player in the world? And I think this stuff right now, I told you to listen to the Hoop Collective, Windhorse podcast.
Sorry, I forgot to tell me about it. You texted me that this morning.
So the Hoop Collective with Windhorse, and he has McMahon on there and Bontemps. It's about the 15-minute mark if you want to fast forward. But Windhorse is covering Team USA and following them all around. And he said that anywhere Kevin Durant goes, Ant follows him. Off the bus. Like Windhorse did like 8 minutes on this. Just everywhere he goes, Ant follows him. Anytime KD gets a shot up in practice, Ant goes right behind him, takes one. He's just learning and growing so much. And all of this, again, if you want to talk about specific plays, I get that. But this whole experience, all of this is going to make for a really cool book for Chris Hine. But it's also going to make for, this might be his story for him to be the greatest basketball player on the planet. And I've never really thought about that. We've joked about it, but it's like I've never thought about if the Minnesota Timberwolves have the best player in the world. That's crazy.
Totally. If people don't know what Kyle's referencing with the GQ pictures, it was a very...
Bro, he is so cut. He hasn't had a carb in 6 weeks. No croissants.
No croissants. I was... So I guess me or you haven't seen Anthony Edwards in person since the Dallas series, right? Mm-hmm. So what would that be? A couple months. I was watching one of the exhibition games, and I don't know if it was like the shorts or the jersey or whatever, but he looked like longer to me.
Yeah.
And that's like not what it is. I think it's like an evolution of the body type, right? Where he did come into the league, I think, with more of like, you kind of like strong safety, football,
mm-hmm.
running back type of body type, right? I mean, taller, like a big one, but I mean, he's like, was Derrick Henry's size, basically.
Right.
You know, like, which actually isn't like that tall in basketball, but I think what we're seeing is an evolution more into a basketball body type. And that's not just like abs. It's just like an overall, like, I don't know this stuff well enough, but like more of a lean muscle rather than like a bulk. And it's just like, I don't know. I mean, some people probably, like Wolves fans, these Team USA games are really early, like haven't like watched them. And maybe you're seeing some highlights and stuff. I don't know. Maybe I'm like kind of seeing things there, but I'd be curious if other people, if they watch it too, just they're kind of seeing Ant, because his weight has fluctuated since his time being in the league, into like a healthier, more basketball specific body type. And, you know, the very last time we would have saw him was at exit interviews. And what he talked about there was not being ready or in the right shape to be able to play 3-4 playoff series and kind of running out of gas against Dallas. So any of these things, if they're at all true, the body type evolution and you know, even look and cut, that matters if it is true that he wasn't physically ready to, you know, be able to run the ball 20 carries a game for 4 straight playoff series. You know what I mean? Like
right.
He kind of needed, his words, you know, he needed to get in a little bit better of shape, and watching him just literally from thousands of miles away, it looks like it really does.
But you know what I mean, though, when you're talking to Britt maybe the best thing for him is he just doesn't get a day off. Because he referenced, maybe it was last summer, that he took a week off and he got out of shape. I think he said, like, I took a week off and I got fat. And he just doesn't get a day off. But being around LeBron and KD and Steph, and he is such a great personality. I'm telling Wolves fans everything they already know, but he also is very impressionable. And I think for him to just be surrounded by all these guys that have won MVPs and titles and gold medals, again, there's a micro conversation and a macro conversation. I think he's made some plays where he's skipping the ball to the corner. I think he's had some high pick and roll that he's like found the roller, which maybe that's because the rollers are guys like Bam or AD or Embiid and not Rudy. Or maybe he is just more comfortable kind of dissecting defenses and dissecting that type of play. But from a
it's been cool that he's looked comfortable in that role, right? It's like clearly not the main guy, right? Kind of learning how to file in, where the beginning of his career, when he like knew he wasn't the best player, because he wasn't the best player on the team his rookie year, right? That wasn't a good team, but he's probably, Cat or D'Lo or maybe even other players were better than him at that time. And he knew that, and he would just kind of go stand in the corner, right? He didn't know how to like effectively involve himself if he wasn't the top guy in the food chain. And yeah, I feel like that skill has developed, and probably as much of anything from Team USA last summer and Team USA this summer.
I just think I bring up his age way too much, but I do think it's worth actually commenting at this point that he is 22 and surrounded by all these guys. I mean, Tatum and Embiid, all these guys that are in the prime of their career or had Hall of Fame careers, and he's fit in. Like you said, he's kind of accepted his role, which is what probably is why he's one of the guys that's never catching DNPs, because that's what Team USA is all about, is can you accept a role? But I don't know. It's great because it is exhibition basketball, but I've never been more patriotic than when Team USA is playing basketball. But I think this is all part of the Ant story. I always tell you this it might be smart for us all to take a step back and be like, holy shit, this kid is on the team that we cover, or the team that, we watch and cheer for. So I think he's been great. I think all the stories coming out, the photos we referenced were funny. The KD stories about Ant kind of following him around like a little brother. I mean, if you got a sibling, you know what that's like. Yeah. But then also too, the whole ping pong thing where he was at ping pong standing up, just being himself. I mean, he really is the total package. But it's not just all the funny things he used to say on Zoom, or he's also one of the best basketball players ever. And as you get it back into training camp and this roster, and again, all the talent that they have, Kevin Garnett was a lot to this franchise, but he was never considered the best player in the league, right?
Well, maybe 04, but not the best player in the world. Or I don't know.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, he won MVP one year, but yeah, you're right. It would be.
You know what I mean? Like Kevin Garnett was a lot to this city and this team and this organization, this state, but he was never what Ant could be. And Ant hasn't, hit the resume that Kevin Garnett hit in this city or with this team. But I just don't think I've ever actually sat down and watching it on Team USA, against Jokic, for example, who is probably the best player. It just made me think like, holy shit, what if one day it is him with a bullet? And it's not even an argument. It's like, oh, he's top 5. It's like, Ant's the guy on the globe. What could that mean for this team? And it probably means that this team is just going to continuously be really, really good, regardless of who comes in, or, if they pivot from two bigs to being an up and down transition team. So it's been great. I've really enjoyed. I mean, I like watching Rudy play. I like watching all the Timberwolves players play for their respective countries, but seeing how Ant has seamlessly fit in, and not only fit in, but really embrace the moment and is open to learning from the guys that he looked up to, it's a really, really cool story.
You mentioned the other Wolves players playing in the Olympics. It's kind of been interesting for these first two games is the other Wolves players haven't played very much for their teams. Joe Ingles played 3 minutes in their first game versus Spain, 0.0 rebounds, 0 assists. Their second game versus Canada, he was DNP'd. It's more just kind of, I guess, like the vet on that team, or the Tyrese Halliburton role. But for Australia, Nickeil Alexander-Walker played 13 minutes in their first game, in Canada's first game versus Greece. He had 0 points, 0 rebounds, 0 assists, over 5 from the field. And then 9 minutes yesterday against Australia, again, 0.0 rebounds, 0 assists. Those guys, Nikhil and Ingles, we knew to some extent they would be bench guys on their team. Hopefully they catch lightning in a bottle, like one game or something, or, play a role, and that might still come later on in the tournament. The Rudy one's been kind of interesting, though. And granted, the first game he was in some foul trouble, but he only played 18 minutes in that game, had 7 points, 3 rebounds, 1 assist. And then yesterday, I'm blanking. Who did they play yesterday again? You were watching that game, France.
Japan.
Japan, yes. Again, Rudy at the beginning of the game wasn't playing very much. That game did end up going to overtime, and Rudy played all of the overtime. So he got to 27 minutes played in that game, had 7 points, 15 rebounds, and 3 assists. The rebounds, we were texting about this yesterday. The rebounds were really meaningful. That game was really close. Really, actually, probably the most fun game of the tournament thus far was Japan and France going into overtime there. I mean, 4-point play and one with 10 seconds left to send it to OT. That was wild. But Rudy was meaningful in the fourth quarter, getting those rebounds and playing defense, and in overtime was kind of the reason they won it. But until the fourth quarter there, I was like, whoa, like Rudy doesn't feel really like one of the main pieces on France. And so that just kind of happens when Victor Wembanyama gets entered into the mix there. I think everybody on that team's role has been changing. But just for people, Wolves fans, who maybe haven't been watching the Olympics, that's what the other Wolves players have been doing thus far, haven't been super involved, and probably a little bit less involved than I anticipated coming in.
I don't know. The Joe Ingles one, I don't know what happened there. I don't know if he's just, like you said, on the team to be a vet, or if I jinxed this when I said that Terrence Shannon Jr. would play more than him. We made a dinner bet. The Nikhil stuff, that just might have been kind of, only 9 minutes in a certain matchup. He has had bigger moments for that team that has a lot of guards. The Rudy thing, though, was interesting because you and I were watching that whole game, and he didn't start for the second half. But then also, too, like, it wasn't because...
Both games he didn't start the second half, yeah.
But it also wasn't like Wembanyama was killing it, because he was scoreless in the second half. Like, he did cook in overtime. I think he had, like, 9 of their 11 points or whatever. But I did. I mean, at this point, it's just Rudy Gobert's never going to have an offensive game, and maybe he'll throw a couple floaters to appease you, but that's not what he does. But I did think when it came down to making winning plays, that is the Rudy Gobert experience, right? Like, He made great defensive plays, great rotations. That France team is, to me, last year, next year will be different, but last year they're kind of like the Suns to me in terms of just, I don't get the hype. Their guards are weird. They have like French Patty Mills, but they don't really get a lot of good sets. They don't really have a lot of stuff. They just kind of throw it to Victor and be like, hey, can you save us? So it's kind of a bad team. But yeah, France-Japan was awesome. And I thought they don't win that game, or they don't force overtime without that crazy play. But I thought in the fourth quarter, Rudy played really well. But yeah, international basketball is just always so much different to think like, okay, the Wolves got Joe Ingles to replace Kyle Anderson, and he's catching almost DNPs on an Australia team. So fun to watch them, but I don't know how much you can take from any of those guys. I mean, I don't really I'm not concerned that the French coach is like, let's just not start Rudy in the second half.
No, it's mostly just
what it is.
Just noting it. Like what you said, the offense just is what it is with Rudy. And if there's not, if he can't do more offensively in this context, if he's not a significantly better post-up player than he is in the NBA, which he just isn't. Like, at some point, that's just not really part of his game, and should in time move further and further out of it. And what I was thinking about when I was watching that, because he's getting guarded by like some 6'8", 6'9" dude, single coverage in the post, and he's not really doing anything with it. Not even really trying to like do anything with it. And I was thinking about it in the sort of narrative of the summer is that the Wolves are trying to become more of an offensive team, and at the cost slightly of defense, right? That's Ingles and Rob Dillingham into the rotation over Kyle Anderson and Jordan McLaughlin, whatever, right? So if that's true, if they are going to be better on offense, better overall offensive personnel, which I think is true, that then should mean Rudy himself should have to do less offensively. right? And that checks out, and you're just allowing Rudy to fall further and further back into what he was more with Utah. 2 years ago, when the Wolves were bad, Rudy's first year, they didn't have enough offense, and there was just too much Rudy post-ups. But it was like, well, it's like him or Jalen Noel isolation again. As the Wolves get better and better offensively through acquisitions or just through Ant getting better or Carl playing more, there's less and less of a need for Rudy to be more than he can be offensively. And I think because of that, we should see Rudy's percentages go back up. Could we get back to like 70% from the field or close to that, and the volume of it to go down. And that's not a bad thing. That's a value, I think, within this construct of how they're trying to sort of shape and acclimate the roster. Does that make sense?
Rudy Gobert would kill for Mike Conley to have French nationalism, like to have just because everything you just said is true, and about his role on France, but also his role with the Wolves the first 2 seasons of this experiment and then moving forward. But also, I just don't think he has any guards that know how to unlock him, whether it be a Mike Conley or a Kyle Anderson. So no, I think you're right. And I always think back to the Tim Conley comment or Chris Finch. I mean, those two guys have been pretty flawless since Rudy got here in terms of just, I think, how they've managed the whole situation. But they should have never said we're going to unlock Rudy Gobert, because I think that set the franchise back a little bit by being like, you know what, maybe they should have said at that introductory press conference, we just acquired one of the best defensive players of all time and we're going to become a defensive juggernaut, rather than being like, we're going to, because there's nothing to unlock. Like I said, this is, if he can't show you any offense in situations like you said against a 6'6" player from Japan when they need more scoring and the talent around him is not that good, it's never going to happen when he's surrounded by Ant and Carl and Rob Dillingham. So, I don't...
And that's okay.
This is not a great comp, but to me, it's like Summer League again. I just want to highlight the highs of all these guys in their international play, and I'm not super worried about the things that don't work, because these guys haven't been playing that. I mean, even the European teams that have played together for a long time, they've only been together for a couple weeks. So, I thought Rudy was the best of the rest, right, of Nikhil and Joe Ingles this week. But it's still fun to just see these guys in different environments, and some of them have bigger roles, some of them have smaller roles. But it's better than, again, we're doing this July 31st. Remember what July 31st is typically like? Fantasy football season hasn't totally started yet. There's no other sports on, and you're just watching White Sox Tigers. Like, I'm happy to have the Olympics in our lives.
Yeah, I'm loving it. Let's grab our first break here. Today's show is brought to you by Adriana Lonick at Coldwell Banker Realty. And if you're like Kyle and you are buying a house, the first step in that process is to find someone who can help you move through that. And whether it's a vacation property, a second home, selling your home, buying your first home, Adriana can help you in that process. And the first step there is to set up a free consultation with her. You can do that by going to thedancingrealtor.com. That's what I have up on the screen right now. If you go to thedancingrealtor.com, this thing will pop up that says you could win free Timberwolves tickets if you book a strategy session with Adriana. And by booking that and having that consultation, there you go. Chance for Wolves tickets next year. Again, that's thedancingrealtor.com, or you can call or text her at 715-304-9920. If you're ready to get the ball rolling on home ownership and score a pair of free Wolves tickets, do go to thedancingrealtor.com. And if you are in the process of buying a home, you will need to fund that home. And today's show is brought to you also by Supreme Lending. You can go to twolvesmortgages.com to get ready for a winning mortgage experience with Ben Coulter and the Mortgage Dream team at Supreme Lending in Edina, Minnesota. You see up here on the screen, the Mortgage Dream team offers a deep playbook to help you out. 8-day closes your loan in as fast as 8 days for a leg up on the competition. $25,000 close on time guarantee. They guarantee your deal closes on time. And the Minnesota Housing Program, up to $18,000 in down payment or closing cost assistance. And in addition to all that, if you mention T-Wolves Special, when you contact them to let them know that you came from us, you'll be eligible for your first year at 1% below your note rate. Call Ben Coulter today at 612-268-5454 or go to twolvesmortgages.com for more information. Let Ben and his team help you win your dream home.
Let me comment for a sec.
Yep.
That shit's so important. There's someone out there that's listening that's like, I don't need a realtor. I bought this. Like, I get it. You're better than us. But good realtors and good lenders and good people to fix your home. The one thing you'll learn when you move in from an apartment to a house, Dane, is the maintenance person becomes you. So all of the people that are sponsoring this pod are really, really helpful and can make your life a lot easier. So again, go support the people that support us because they do fantastic work. And speaking of fantastic work, I have a question about Rudy Gobert for you.
Yeah, go ahead.
You were putting together some mailbag questions. I was kind of reading them just in general because I just thought of this on the fly with the Woj bomb a couple hours ago about Jarrett Allen signing an extension with the Cavs. Question's pretty vague. Take it anywhere you want. But Rudy Gobert is now eligible for a contract extension, is he not?
Yes, he is. Yes.
And how do you think that'll play out? And do you think the Wolves would want to extend him maybe at a lower amount to try to... I still don't know how the CBA really works or second apron. I think we're all, including team executives, learning on the fly. But that, to me, in terms of roster building, is the only real leftover question right now that Summer League's done and the team is pretty much built. It's like, will they or will they not extend the 4-time Defensive Player of the Year?
Yeah, and I think the answer to that, to get out ahead of it, is no. They will not extend him now. And the reason behind that is he has $44 million for his contract this year, and then next season a $47 million player option. What you could do is what he could do is decline that $47 million player option and then sign a contract that starts that year. But that would be 25, 26, and goes on beyond that. And the Jarrett Allen thing did get me thinking about that, because what Jarrett Allen's contract is right now before this extension is $20 million this year for 24, 25, and $20 million for 25, 26. He signed a 3-year, $91 million contract on top of that. So what I'm thinking about, I think people who do follow the salary cap element of the Wolves and know that the second apron is a problem and only going to be more and more of a problem as time goes on. There's this idea of, okay, if Rudy declines that 47 and you get him down to a lower number, then now you got a little bit more flexibility next year to maybe get below that second apron line. So I was thinking about it like, all right, Allen got a 3-year 91 on top of it. So if we take the 47 and we just add on that exact same contract, 91 million more over 3 years, that's 47 plus 91 is 138 over 4 years, right? So let's just say 140. Like if you just gave Rudy the Jarrett Allen extension, but kind of spread it out over 4 years so that number wasn't 47. Is this tracking?
Yep.
At this point? Okay, so what that would look like then, rather than it being 47, it would be 35 a year on average. You could start to be like 32 that first year, 34, 36, 38. That 32 is big because you go from 47 down to 32. So that's 15 million different in what that 25, 26 salary is, which is a route to get out of the second apron. Now, I think the question is, is that enough for Rudy? And people might be saying like, well, Rudy Gobert is better than Jarrett Allen. True. Probably like noticeably better than him. But by that time that extension kicks in, or that the new year for Rudy, he'll be 34. So that's, you think about adding 3 years, I'd say 34, 35, and 36-year-old season. Will 34, 35, 36-year-old Rudy Gobert be as good as 28, 29, 30-year-old Jarrett Allen? Probably, right? Like at some point there's diminishing returns to a player into their mid-30s, particularly if they're a center. So again, I don't know. Just looking at those numbers, that doesn't sound that crazy to me that you scratch off that 47 in 25-26 and you sign a 4-year 140 extension in its place, average 35 million a year, but 32, 34, 36, 38 if you give him, 2 mil a year raises. I'm just glad to have that Allen thing because I've had no idea like where to even go with the idea. Like, of course, there's when people bring it up, like, oh, he'll decline his player option and he'll sign for less. I was like, yeah, okay, I could get that, but what does less look like? Is less 40 a year? Well, now we have a 30 a year example of a player who is the same archetype as Rudy Gobert, even if a little bit worse, but younger. I don't know. That that made some sense to me. That might be a somewhat fair range. I don't know, maybe the Allen deal is a team-friendly deal, and so that's still too low, whatever. But I don't know. I don't think it's crazy to say that you could get that Rudy 47 number down to low 30s, mid 30s for next season, and that's part of your pathway out. That's part of your way to maybe be able to re-sign Nickeil Alexander-Walker or Naz Reid. Like that stuff matters, so as to be able to get them. So that's mostly me just thinking out loud. But go ahead.
Two things. One, all of that very detailed. You're the best. Is not in terms of we've joked about this, but we're trying to get away from this idea of cap space, right? Because you're not talking about lowering that number to have cap space to go sign Zach LaVine, right? You're talking about just lowering that number to try to get under the second apron, because as a repeater, you start getting into situations where, right?
Just at some point, like even second apron and like the limitations that comes with, like no mid-level exception, only have to sign minimum guys, as we experience this summer, what that looks like. I mean, part of it is just like, man, if you could save 15 million in just your overall expense of your team, just from a luxury tax standpoint of what you'll have to pay if you're Glenn Taylor or Lori Rodriguez, that could be $60 million in luxury tax payment that you save there. And I think that's like, I think that's always been the bigger part of this. Not that it doesn't hurt. I mean, we're feeling it. It hurts. It's a pinch. Like some of these restrictions are like, can only add minimum players. But I think the real like impact of the second apron is how much people need to pay in luxury tax. I mean, look what the Clippers did. I mean, rich team, but just forecasting years of hundreds of millions of dollars in luxury tax payments. Like even Ballmer got out of the way of that, And at some point, I mean, it's great. The Wolves are going to pay over $100 million in luxury tax this season, whoever's the owner. And that's a credit to either of those owners, even if it's Glenn. Yeah, credit to Glenn for paying $100 million. But that's not going to be a forever thing, particularly once it becomes a repeater thing and that 100 turns into 150 or 100. I think the Warriors paid $177 million in a luxury tax payment this past season. Like these numbers have to go down at some point so that the organization isn't operating at a 100 million plus annual loss. That's just business of it. So,
and
yeah,
as we've talked about on this before, and no one really cares about this because you shouldn't care about owners or their pockets, but not only are you now paying out, you're not receiving in. And as these luxury tax payments this year explode and are probably more than ever, even as teams like the Clippers or Warriors are trying to finagle their way down, if you are used to getting as a tax team a $22 million check as they split all that money around, and now you're on the hook for $125 million going out, it's $150 million difference.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean?
And that's just I would just say to like listeners, like let's always remember that part of this, whether Wolves or whatever, as we, like you said, Kyle, like we're learning the ramifications of the new CBA and the second apron. And the most underrated ramification, I think, when I listen to podcasts about it or read articles about it, is the fact that it's real cash that you got to cut a check for on top of all the salaries you're paying. So that's just going to be part of the reality that the Wolves are going to need to play in, just like the Celtics will, or any other team to sort of keep this together. So I don't know. That was fun to just kind of dig into the Allen idea or use that as an example of like, yeah, I don't know. You can probably somewhat logically put together an argument that it makes sense that you could get Rudy's number for the 25-26 season down from 47 to like 35, something like that.
So my second point, just to circle back, because I'm kind of just digging through your mailbag questions. You mentioned new owners or ownership.
Yeah.
From what I've heard, arbitration probably not September anymore, maybe later in the year, which just simply means that there will be no resolution to any of this anytime soon.
Yeah, I actually I did some asking. Arbitration is going to start the first week of November.
Okay.
That's what I've heard.
I'll tweet that out and report it like I got it myself. And then two, the Tim Connolly thing, he kicks his opt-out to next year. Yeah. And I'm not doing anything other than just kind of adding this into the formula because I wanted to go back to the question I asked you. You outlined that all so well, and you kind of made it sound like a football wide receiver, right? We're like, okay, now we know what the market is. Jarrett Allen. Like, right, now sure. We kind of, but when I said directly, do you think it'll happen? You bluntly kind of said no. So,
well, but that's a different. Sorry, what I should have clarified was,
you know what I mean?
An extension for him to get an extension right now. Allen signed an extension off of, in addition to the 2 years that he has. Mm-hmm. I don't think we're going to get any news that Rudy has signed an extension. I think what it'd be next summer. Rudy opts out of his player option and then extends off of that. That's a distinction to be made because it changes that 47 number down to something like 35. Allen's is 20 this year, 20 next year, and then he added 30 a year on top of that for 3 more years. Those are a little bit different things, right?
Yeah, so, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but like kind of like the LeBron thing where he had a player option, right? And he like declined it, was technically a free agent, but then signed back with the Lakers at a sliver less. Obviously, you would ideally hope that Rudy would take more than a sliver less, but that's what you're trying to say. More of the next summer thing.
And it just gives you some optionality there. Even I would imagine if you're Tim Connolly in the front office to like present this to Rudy of, theoretically, let's say they have a mandate of no second apron for the following season. All right, Rudy, like if we can get you down to 32, then we can bring back Naz Reid or Nickeil Alexander.
How much do you like Naz?
Right. Yeah. Like which as to use the LeBron example, like that did really come together. And like LeBron took a discount, but what did that end up being? Like $1 million, like $1.5 million.
But if Rudy's kid is better than Bronny, then we have an option. So okay, that was really good though because it's good timing. I've been wanting to just ask you that. That's again outside of this ownership thing, and maybe this final roster spot that's technically open. I mean, they're probably not going to do too much with that. Maybe they'll just keep it open. The Rudy Gobert extension is really the only piece of meat that we can talk about because he is now technically eligible for an extension. So all those numbers make sense.
Yes. All right, let's just keep going through this. I know you wanted to.
Let's go from the tallest player on the team to the shortest.
Rob Dillingham, do you have one of these in particular that you wanna grab?
Yeah, there was one from. I mean, there was a couple. Nate Ninjas had how much of a damper has Rob's summer league performance put on your expectations for him, if at all? There was another one that just said from Bia Yim Bi. Hopefully not a dumb question, but did Dillingham just play better and make shots, or did his role change a little bit that last game with Terrence Shannon Jr. missing and whatnot? A couple other good ones from Jay Anger and Campbell and _NP. But you did kind of do a whole pod with Britt, and you focused on that final game, which was vastly different than the rest of the games that Rob played.
I think to be fair to some of those people asking questions, like they might have sent me that question before that.
I think so too.
that fifth game, yeah. But
no, I just that was the biggest takeaway for me. Still, even though Terrence Shannon Jr. popped more than ever, and Daishen Nix was cool, and I thought Leonard Miller and Josh had moments. You and I haven't really talked about this on the pod, but so the Rob Dillingham thing, the size, right? Because I've learned something this summer. Well, I've learned a lot about houses, but I've also learned that Rob Dillingham probably is the second most popular player on the team, behind Ant. Like he's got, and I'm not comparing them to D'Lo stands because these people seem like they breathe fresh air, but he's got a lot of fans, and a lot of them don't love the constant conversations about his lack of height, lack of size. And it kind of made me think, about Jaden. And I know when you had Krasinski on, you kind of talked about Nas, but I was thinking it more through the Jaden McDaniels prism, where he had a red flag in the draft, and it was his attitude. And he's kind of had to fight those allegations his whole career, right? And we've seen the worst of it.
Yeah, I was saying he lost a couple of those fights.
Right, but I mean, like,
yeah,
so
yeah.
he was a McDonald's All-American. He was a top guy in high school, and then he kind of drops in the draft because of that.
Yep.
And it cost him millions of dollars. And we saw the lows, right? Not only the punching of the wall thing, but the whole Rudy Gobert, Draymond Green thing. That was because of Jaden. But guess what? Jaden has, for 4 years, when he gets a dumb foul or something happens, a broadcaster will be like, that McDaniels guy is kind of a lunatic. And he was, second team all defense, and he's made $160 million or whatever extension. Like, he has beat the allegations. Mm-hmm. So for Rob, I think Rob's whole career, he's going to have to fight the allegations of being, I'm 6'2", 175. I'm bigger than Rob. Now, I know that's all I've got on Rob, and he's better at everything else, including probably owning a house, but he's going to have to constantly fight those allegations. And there will be moments where you and I do pods, and it's like they really picked on him last night. And your comp of Trae Young is Trae's made it work. Mm-hmm. So I don't think it's not a take to say the sky is blue. Like, just because it's like, it was great. The sky is blue. Rob Dillingham is small. And I looked this up on WebMD. I think 1% of people at 20 years old can have a growth spurt. So I don't think Rob is going to be 6'5" when he's 23 years old. But that doesn't mean that, Rudy has bad hands. And Carl has never figured out how to eliminate stray voltage. Everyone has something that is going to be the talking point when it's bad. And I think for Rob, it's going to be his size. But for that fifth game, I was really impressed by Rob, even though his offense didn't really click in those first couple games, because I was on the scene, I was there, and you could tell that he was being asked to do something that he wasn't comfortable with, and that's what Summer League is about. It's not about winning some fake trophy. It's about putting these guys in tough spots so they develop, so that when it actually matters, come October, he'll be ready. So I thought Rob had a really, really great Summer League, and he kind of capped it off in that fifth game by just doing what he does best, but I was really impressed by his playmaking overall. It's just height and weight are going to be something we talk about all season long and all career long.
No, but I like that we shouldn't ignore it. Just like
we don't do it with anyone else.
Yeah, we don't ignore Rudy's hands or all the things you just laid out there, or even Trae. Like, Trae has become an effective max salary player in the league at the same size, and can still need to fight the size issue. And people talk about that with him, all the time. And it is a bit of an issue. Trae Young's not a bad player. Trae Young is a super, super dynamic offensive weapon. And it shouldn't rule Rob out at all. And it should only, really be talked about or be really something really concerning if we're seeing, 25 games and this is a problem, And then you go, well, maybe the reality of the situation is he's going to need to be 21 years old or whatever before he can consistently make a positive impact. But it's just something to track over time. And it's just something myself, I want to check during the season of let's not totally incriminate him for it.
No.
And let's also acknowledge it at the same time, because it will be a factor, and it will be a factor in year one when he will be at his smallest, right? Because he's going to play, and they're going to give it the shot. But I thought maybe, when we were out there and we did pods up the first two games and he didn't play well and he did look small, and we talked about that, and we should have acknowledged that. And then when me and Britt did the pod talking about the fifth game, we raved about it because he made it work and looked great through the size. That's just going to be part of it's going to be part of his story, just like all the other guys you listed off. It's part of their story too.
Not to keep plugging the Hoop Collective, but I have to find as many pods as I can when I'm doing house chores now. They were talking about Tyus Jones, and I just wanted to say this to you to kind of get your reaction, but I think Tyus Jones was the single biggest transaction of the summer for the Suns, and I think it's bigger than the Paul George thing, because I watched that Suns team and I was much lower on them even when it was playoff time. I was just like, they have a bunch of they just don't have anything to glue that team together. And I think Tyus is one of the best glue guys in the league, and he's going to start. But on the Hoop Collective, they talked about what an incredible signing at the minimum. Tyus is trying to reset his value. But the McMahon and Windhorst all said, but come playoff time, he probably won't start because of his size. So again, like, great move. It's going to make them much better. But even he is like, and I don't know how he compares to Rob, but I don't think it's bad to bring up some of the physical limitations and just know that he's always going to have to go against those or fight those, while also being like, he might enter the league in October and have one of the 5 best handles in the league. And when he starts cooking, I mean, he is the shots that he was taking and making in the 4th or 5th game of Summer League were the same shots he was taking and just not making in the first couple. He's kicking his feet out. He has a funky form, but he is a bucket. And, a lot of people said this at Summer League, people that cover the draft, but also, actual executives, that if he was 6'6", he would have gone first overall.
Yeah.
So the Wolves are lucky to have that he's not 6'6", because I think he's going to be exactly what they need off the bench. I've seen some people be like, well, do you think he'll go to Iowa or whatever? I would be shocked if the 8th overall pick on a team that has a hole at backup point guard is ever down in Des Moines, unless they're just traveling through to New Orleans. So I think he's going to be a really fun player. I'm glad for him. Remember talking to him after those first couple games? Like, he was clearly trying to be a company man and be like, they're asking me to do this, but he really wanted to score. And it was really bugging him. And that's why John Wall came in. I was like, chill out, man. You'll be good. I think he wants to be great. And at 19, that's a cool aspect to have for a kid that is going to have a role. Like, he is going to be put into this rotation at night 1, and he's going to fail sometimes. And I'll be really interested to see how his teammates and Finch let him have, a little bit longer of a leash, because Josh or Leonard or all these other guys, they don't have as much equity invested in them as they do with Rob. And I'm excited. I mean, he would be maybe the second most exciting guy that I'm looking forward to next season, behind Ant, because every year it's like, what can Ant do now?
Look up another question. But I want to say, just like in general, with the whole, like, a guy won't be able to play in the playoffs. I think we've gotten like way too black and white with that. And I think Mike Conley is a really good example of the gray of that, where Mike Conley played throughout the entirety of the playoffs. His minutes weren't really slashed at any point, but Mike Conley was an issue. His size was an issue, particularly in the Dallas series. I mean, remember we were talking about that double drag thing that they were running over and over again, specifically with the notion of Mike needing to come in so as to, kind of chuck the Gafford or Lively on the roll, and they just hit that over and over and over again. I think it was game 3, right? Mike Conley was a little bit of a problem defensively in the playoffs. The Wolves would have also been screwed if they just were like, little bit of a problem, we're not going to play Mike Conley in the playoffs. It doesn't go like that. Sometimes did Steven Adams not play in the 21-22 series against the Wolves with Memphis? Yes, because he couldn't guard Cat. But there's a lot more examples of teams like finding ways to make it work within there. Like, I do not think Tyus Jones is going to not play in the play, right, which is not what you said. I know that, but I think it'll be more like Tyus will need, he'll probably be attacked, and they're going to need to make game plan adjustments, or Tyus is going to need to be strong enough to hold that big up for a second before getting Nurkic back onto him or whatever. And it's the same thing for Rob Dillingham. Like, that's what it's going to be. And he's going to be not as strong as Mike Conley or Tyus Jones right away, but over time, the hope is with Rob Dillingham or even with Trae Young, that it's more in that gray area of, he can still play. There's going to be some problems here with them defensively. And I don't know, that's just kind of the norm in the NBA if you're undersized or slow-footed, right? 1s and 5s have their roles change the most in the playoffs. But I don't know. I just feel like it's gotten too black and white there.
It's probably one of the laziest ways people talk about basketball, right? Like, can Bradley Beal play in the playoffs? He was terrible. He has a max contract and a no trade clause. So, I don't think Rob is going to struggle in the playoffs. He's just like everyone else, right? Like, Carl kind of went through this. Like, can Carl play in the playoffs? It's like, actually, he might have been the best.
They probably will struggle. There's just a difference between struggling and
being unplayable.
Yes, like can't play Cantor. Like, it's not. those are different.
Stick to
things.
Sports.
Yeah.
Stick to sports.
But yeah, I don't. And this is what's going to be. It's going to be a interesting story to like navigate and actually watch it and, be at games in person, whether it's us or like fans there of like, yeah, what does Rob Dillingham's size look like? Is it actually a problem when he's coming off the bench and defending, backups more often than he is starters? Like there's going to be a lot of, I don't know, nuance to assessing how problematic the defense is, just as there is with, situationally with Mike Conley. So
let's do one more. I know it's the end of July, and we're gonna kind of slow down a little bit in August, but we'll keep this pod somewhat active, right? We'll do a couple in August to keep people going. Maybe we'll just do a whole fantasy football pod on the stream. But a couple people wanted to ask you, like, what's the funniest story from the locker room or a press conference or anything kind of a fun memory? But there was one more basketball question, and I think it's kind of a good one because someone randomly with the team was just telling me, and you said this about the bigger picture about how many guys are just in the gym. I don't know. It just seems like the NBA is like, these guys really, they're all in the gym trying to work on stuff. But someone with the team was like, man, Jaden's here all the time. Like he has a kid, and maybe that's, a newborn, maybe that's why. But I know Jaden McDaniels has been over at the practice facility a lot. And so we have a question here from Kermit Wiltz for MVP on Twitter that just said, if you could pick one area of growth in Jaden's game this offseason to make the Wolves better, what would it be? And the lazy answer to that would be his offense. But for someone smart like you, what would be a specific area of his game that if you said, wow, that got a lot better, and you'd be like, holy shit, like it really turned around, like it made him take a level up and this team just expand a whole new area of the Grand Theft Auto map?
Yeah, I mean, I would say offense, but I would like the answer to be for Jaden McDaniels, not just shooting, like not just catch and shoot 3-point, like. And what I'm interested to see from Jaden McDaniels, who is as liable to make a leap as anybody on the roster, right? Next season, like 23, 24 years old. I would, in a team concept that has more offensive players now, as it theoretically does, has more shooters now. Can Jaden be? I'm interested to see lineup pairings where Jaden's the worst shooter, and so he can maybe float into the dunker spot, right? Can he be a more of a weaponized cutter? Can he get more on ball reps? Because I think there's a lot more room within his offensive game between where he's at in terms of that and where his ceiling is. I don't think there's a lot more room to grow as a shooter. I think he kind of is forever going to be not a bad shooter, but not like someone where you're like, that's knockdown, like he's operates somewhere in that gray between non-shooter and shooter. So I would just love to see the leap and the inclusion from a schematic standpoint, or the intention from a Mike Conley or Karl Anthony Towns to find him in those spots. I always thought D'Angelo Russell was actually really good at that with Jaden McDaniels.
They had that eye, like it's a soccer thing, but like he kind of made an eye, and then they just cut backdoor cut, and he found him for the lob every time.
Yeah, it was just like, and maybe just part of it is trust, trust or more belief in that. And as Jaden shows more, maybe he can tap into more of that. I mean, I could keep going too. I think I'm interested to see Jaden not on the ball as much defensively. I think he has a lot of opportunity to show value as like a weak side rim protector, guarding the guy in the corner, rotating over to the middle to contest or block shots there. I think the more you take him out of on ball situations, you lower his fouling too, which would be another obvious one that we would say for Jaden is, are there ways that he can, foul less so as to be able to play more? It's funny. Me and Britt were talking about the rotation a little bit in the last episode. I was like, oh yeah, like Mike and Rudy, they check out of the game 6 minutes in. Karl Anthony Towns checks out 9 minutes in. Ant plays the whole first quarter. Well, what's Jaden's rotation in the first quarter? Well, he plays until he gets a second foul. Like that's
90
that's
seconds in. Yeah.
Whatever. Sometimes it's the whole time. Sometimes it's like not. It's all his playing time has been so defined by his foul trouble. So if you could find a way to improve some of that, that's what. Yeah, I think McDaniels is one of the most exciting, interesting, what could this be guys for the team next year.
I think it'd be cool if he could match his rebound total with assists, because it's kind of a specific thing, but I think he's like a 3.5 rebounds a game on his career, and he averaged like 1.5 assists. But just if I told you that he was averaging 3 assists next year, to me it would just be that he's doing everything you just kind of said, right? I think his playmaking is underrated. He's just never asked to do it, but getting into the paint a little more, he does like to hit those little mid-range shots. I just think with all the stuff we're talking about and the massive leap that Nas took, and the Carl and Rudy stuff, and then obviously you inject it with this youth and this offensive-minded draft that they just had with Rob and Theige. It's kind of like Jaden has become the forgotten man in a little bit. And we'll do this one because this is a fun one. This will be this is at Kyle Theige on Twitter. How many wins would you project this 5-man starting lineup to have next year?
Oh my God, we talked about that. All right.
Rob Dillingham, Anthony Edwards, Terrence Shannon Jr., Jaden McDaniels, and Nas Reed. I just want to put that out there because I want people in the comment section or on Twitter to let us know, because you and I were having fun with this. I just want to see that 5-man rotation play a little bit, because I think they could really get out in transition. They'd be super, super athletic, and all 5 of those guys can shoot. There's limitations for sure, but that's a 5-man group next year that I don't know if Finch, how much he'll trust it, but I just think it'd be a really fun, tough, physical, fast lineup that they could throw at teams kind of during the dead months, that they could just kind of counter a team and have an 8-0 run in the second quarter.
Oh, I want to first say, I want to see that too. Like,
okay.
I don't know. You weren't
hating.
In that lineup. I just was like, Kyle was like, how
35 to 38 wins.
Yeah. And I said less because we started 2 rookies. And I think you're really underrating regular season wins that Rudy Gobert provides.
No, yep, I understand.
You know what I'm saying? And Cat too, from a consistency of efficient offensive production. And Mike Conley, like Cat, Mike, and Rudy are regular season like win stackers.
Mm-hmm.
And the good news is the Wolves have them, so they can play those lineups and the younger groups and the more fun and the get out and run groups as well. But a big part of the reason why the Wolves won 56 games last year, it was just Rudy Gobert and the consistency of Rudy Gobert and the intensity he played with, what like rebounding as a defender, like to back to his defensive level, defensive player of the year. Whenever the time comes that Rudy Gobert is not on the Timberwolves, I think we'll really appreciate that more. Like once it's gone,
sure.
You know what I'm saying? Of just like that. If Rudy Gobert is playing and they're playing the Detroit Pistons, like Wolves are winning, like 98% chance the Wolves are winning this. Now Rudy Gobert, like that goes down, and we saw that we saw that before Rudy got here, like just the value of consistency. So I want to see that group too.
I think what it highlights to me is that they entered this offseason with the best team they've ever had, or one of the 2 best teams they've ever had, and they just came off the Run It Back tour, and I would have been a little less excited and felt a little more stale had they have ran it completely back again with Kyle Anderson, who is a very winning player, and Jordan McLaughlin, who is a very winning player. I'm just really excited for what this new type of team could be, with the cornerstones of professionalism and maturity still here, Mike and Rudy and stuff. But just, I mean, what Terrence Shannon Jr. did in limited time at Summer League was really impressive. The Joe Ingles thing is TBD, but if he's like he was in Orlando, he'll give them so much more floor spacing. And then, with Rob, despite the height and the weight, he clearly is just one of the best scorers in this draft, a draft that I think has already shown to be probably better than some people thought. So sometimes I just like fresh. That's why I have all white walls. But I'm just excited to see this team next year because there's so many different things now they can do while also still, against the Detroit Pistons, starting Rudy Gobert, unlike the French team, and winning those games. So it's they have a little maybe lower of a ceiling, but maybe a little higher or a little lower of a floor, just because they do have youth and inexperience now coming in, but they might have a higher ceiling. And in a competitive West that continues to reload and more good players join that conference, I think we would have all been bummed entering August, entering the offseason, entering training camp, if the Wolves did nothing. And I think looking back at it now and seeing what we saw in Summer League, they did a lot. And it's going to be a really exciting 24-25 season.
Do you have what's the funniest story from the locker room or press conferences from last season that you have?
You're in there way more than I am. So
well, that's what I'm saying. It's like it kind of all blurs to me, and I'm just thinking about that off the top of my head. It was funny when you were there when Britt walked in and his little, I don't know, Nas really liked his outfit, and he was like, "Our boy came AZ ready." That one was up there.
It was
Ant is just always funny and maybe not always safe stories to tell, but
it was. Well, you've talked about this with everyone, but it was a really cool locker room, and I don't think, me, right, Mr. Management guy, like I just don't think you can fake culture. I think you have to really build that. It sucks that Kyle Anderson is no longer here, but I think this applies to everything in life. I've had stuff these last couple of weeks, but when you're going through hell, just keep going. I think this organization went through hell and just kept going, and now you're looking at a team that came off a Western Conference Finals trip, probably let themselves down, probably wasn't prepared for that and should have made some more noise, and maybe they make the finals, and now we're having different conversations. So I'm excited to see how these young guys who, if nothing else, I know that Rob Dillingham has a big personality and is a great kid, and Terrence Shannon Jr. is a quote-unquote dog. To throw them in now to a locker room, I mean, I saw the pictures, like Rob's locker is right next to Mike Conley's. That's going to be really cool.
Is? On the right side or the left? J-Mac's old spot?
I hate those questions because I was looking at it and I think it was on the right. Facing it's on the right, so to Mike's left.
Yeah. So or to Mike's left. I think that was Dacian Nix's spot before, but who's still on the team? But yeah,
it's gonna be a really. I mean, that locker room is gonna be even louder and crazier and more fun, but it's also probably gonna lead directly to wins. So I hate that we still have like 2.5 months until this thing really kicks off. I know the preseason schedule was just announced, and again, they don't have to go overseas, so they have a little bit more of a normal preseason. But if you're dying for Timberwolves basketball, we'll still give you a couple pods in August, but really just watch the Olympics, watch Equestrian, because it's all we got right now until we draft our teams for fantasy football.
I'm just like cycling through different
things
in my head. Yeah, I did think the one not funny, but would be the most interesting thing from Wolves fans, which was really interesting for me this year, was to watch how Ant led in that setting, in the locker room setting, which was new. It's not because I've been in there for a few years with Ant on the team, and everyone Ant's great in interviews and he's funny and stuff like that. But if you've been around Ant outside of those settings to some extent, I'm not saying I'm like buddies with him or anything, but I've just been around him plenty of times with the microphone off or not the cameras on. And he has there's a little bit of a performance element to when Ant's on camera. And it's really interesting to see him. I remember, man, what was that? Was that the playoffs where, Nas missed a 3 at the end of the game to win it? Just to watch him talk to Nas in that set. I think that was a game where Nas was like 7 of 8 from 3 or something, and then he missed that last one. And it's cool. It's just like new. It's like something Ant has had to figure out of, how to pick guys up, and it's mostly like with the younger guys, but even with Rudy.
There was a viral video though, and this one was on film, but I don't really think he kind of knew it in the moment. But remember when the Wolves tweeted out, he's like, "Hey coach, can I say one thing?" And he looked at Carl. He's like, "You did exactly what we asked you to do this morning." And again, that was technically on camera, but I don't think it wasn't an interview. Yeah. It's cool. And again, that kind of puts a bow on this whole podcast and what we talked about at the top. I just think it's cool to be part of that kid's story. And I mean, I'm just a dude, but to watch him, Chris Hine, our friend, posted this other day, but I was watching the McDonald's thing when it was all the interviews were on Zoom. Yeah. And Ant was saying at the Zoom interview post game, like, "Hey guys, don't talk for a second. I'm ordering McDonald's on my app." And just to see how far he's come, and now he's getting the best tutelage in the world with literally all of the best players that you and I grew up watching in high school and college and throughout our 20s and stuff. So the ceiling for him is non-existent. And not only is he becoming a better player on the court, but he's becoming a better leader off of it. And I just think again, not to say the world is his oyster, but it really opens up so many possibilities of what this franchise can do, because a lot of the weight is on that guy's shoulders. And
the lights are coming, man.
Yep.
The lights are coming. It was really interesting to, we were around like some of the national media and stuff who are covering the Wolves, for these playoff runs. And it was like all these guys who haven't really ever been around AMP before, because it's not a super popular national media trip up to Minneapolis, but just kind of like in awe of just like, this is awesome that, Ant is part of this team. You see these media people and almost like fans of this player. And it's going to be, that's the next sort of mountain for him, because he's lived a pretty like relatively speaking, quiet NBA existence that is more quiet than his quality of play, has gotten him to. And so that's just, it's coming, and there'll be a lot more cameras around him, and he's in the new Netflix documentary. There's just it's going to be constant. And like you said at the beginning, like his life is going to be, 24/7, 12 months a year, pretty much for the next decade plus, right? Like,
and in a
17 years younger than LeBron.
And in a world where Twitter or the internet literally exists just to make fun of people, if he starts losing, it's going to change, right? You can't say all the crazy things or the funny things or be your honest self if you're going 30 and 52. So it does put an extra expectation and pressure on him to like I don't think Anthony Edwards is ever going to be cool playing on a 30 and 52 team.
Yeah.
And as long as the Minnesota Timberwolves have their shit figured out, from ownership all the way down to, the coaching staff, I don't see any reason why this kid, who has clearly showed that he is different than a lot of people that have come up as first overall picks or whatever in his spot, he's okay winning in Minnesota. But this team and this ownership and all this stuff, they have to keep finding ways to put winning on the court. And I think it's been a good offseason for that. It was an offseason that we didn't, did a lot of pods about what are they going to do with the 27th pick or whatever. And for them to turn out two really good rookies at different ages and different experience levels, plus all the other stuff they got coming back, there's no reason that this team in the next couple of months, when you listen to the Hoop Collective or Zach Lowe or the Dane Moore NBA podcast, this is a contender. And this is not, right? We did not use that C word 12 months ago doing pods.
No, they absolutely come in as contenders, and Ant comes in as one of the best players in the NBA. And there you go. There's the challenge, right? Like it's a different bar to want to or need to exceed, and it will be a totally different story next season. And I am glad we have a couple months until it's time to start telling that story. But it's gonna be fun to do it. Let's call it here. Just for listeners, August is like last year we basically did like no episodes in August. I don't think we're going to be doing no episodes in August this year. It'll probably be, if there's some sort of breaking news, probably Kyle and I will come on within 24 hours of that if we can make that work. I know the both of us are trying to take some time off and travel a little bit or whatever.
Birthday month.
Yeah, it's my birthday month. Still got a lot of friends getting married and doing all that. So, if it goes 2 weeks without an episode, it's just we're taking some time. It's just not going to be the same Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday schedule that you all are used to. But that's because we don't have very much to talk about either. So that's all right. If there are things to talk about, me and Kyle or me and Britt or Jace or Chris or whatever, we'll get on to do that in August. And then as training camp kind of starts ramping up and start previewing the season in September, we'll get back to that full volume, and I'm looking forward to that too. You got anything else?
Nope. I appreciate you.
All right. Y'all can follow Kyle on Twitter at Kyle Theige. I'm Dane at DaneMooreNBA until, I don't know, maybe a week or two. We'll pop back on here to wrap up the Olympics or something like that. But we're going to take a little bit of time off at the beginning of August. So until whenever that is, he's Kyle. I'm Dane. Peace out.
How I'm feeling, man, I hope it never stop, yeah. Green and hot so you can find me in the crowd, yeah. Don't let standards ever bring you down, yeah.